Greetings, folks. Joseph Kursky here with you to explore some of the wonderful pop-up options in the new Map Viewer from Esri, part of the ArcGIS system. The first thing to do is configure pop-ups in the new Map Viewer. You can't do anything with pop-ups unless you configure them first. And then you have expressions that you can build. You can also choose fields, and you can add multimedia, all of which we'll explore in this short video. So in this case, I've got an analysis length from a trace downstream I was doing on Maui. And I can just put that field in there, and then when I click on the feature, as pop-up implies, I get the result, which is 18.16, and it's important to know what units you're working with always in a GIS. So here it's in miles. And so I can actually add some text here so I can tell the viewer that the analysis length of that trace downstream is in miles. And of course, I've got some metadata in terms of how that was computed based on the digital elevation model in that area that we'll explore in a little bit. So that is adding a field. Now I can also add an image, and I've got that image online, and it is not wrapped up in any sort of animation or anything. It's just a plain old image, which is exactly what you need if you want these things to work. And so I've got that URL in there, configure image. I got the URL. I'm going to put a title in here. And that way, when I click on my feature, which is the trace downstream, I can get an image. And notice also that pop-ups work not just on point data. Here I've got line data. You can put a pop-up on polygons as well. You can also make sketch layers. That's the subject of another video, and put pop-ups on those as well. So here's my text and my image. We're going to test it out now that I've configured this. I've also got a URL going to the Ahupua'as, so the watershed management zones or districts in Maui for water conservation and management. So now I've got my pop-up with the image, and if I want to, I can dock that pop-up or I can undock that pop-up. So I've got additional capabilities that I didn't have in the classic map viewer. Now when I click on that, because I've got my URL to the Ahupua'a Wikipedia page, it goes automatically to that page. So configure pop-ups, and then you've got options for fields, for expressions, etc. So I can change these at any time. I can delete, add, etc. fields based on what my data is. So it's important to know what data you're working with. So take a look at the fields, which is of course accessible by the table of data that you're working with. So once you know what the fields are, you can more effectively configure your pop-ups. Wonderful to be able to do this. So if I go to my layers and then I go to the triple dots or the ellipses, I can show table, and in this table I can better understand. I'm going to get rid of some of these menus here so I can see my table better. I've got a description, I've got a title, which doesn't really tell me much, but the description does, so I could use that in my pop-up as well. So it is all under configure pop-ups. There's my description. I've got information about it, and I can go ahead and add that if I want to. In this case, the description gives an indication of the national elevation data, 10-meter resolution data from the USGS and Esri that is behind the trace downstream. So again, know your data, indicate to your data users where your sources are, just like a term paper or any other thing that you write. It's important to do that with mapping. So now I've got a source, the national elevation data. That's how I got the trace configured and used. And so now my pop-up is pretty much how I want it. I've got a picture, I've got a URL that it goes to. Once I click on the picture, I've got the metadata in there, the length of the trace. I'm all set with a title and some other descriptions. So you can make these pop-ups really shine, and it's great for the data that you or your students collect in the field to be able to display information about water quality, invasive species, historical homes, whatever you're collecting out in the field. This is where my title comes in. More is not always better in these places, right? So your pop-ups are designed ideally to be fairly short. You don't want to hog the whole screen with a pop-up. There are other ways to display information besides a pop-up. There's labeling and other things that we'll talk about here in a moment. But this is where I can add a little bit extra text if I want to. Again, thinking about your audience and what you want to communicate about each one of these pop-ups. We'll test that out. Now I've got a bit of additional information on there. Wonderful. Okay, it's looking pretty good. Test that one more time. I can dock that pop-up or float that pop-up. Nice. Okay, so that's some of the basics of pop-ups. Let's explore a little bit deeper now. Let's configure the pop-up one more time. In the last few minutes, we did some things with field names. Now let's look at expressions. If I build an expression in here, I've already got one built, and here it is. This trace is in miles is quotes, and then the actual field name. Notice I've got it twice now because I've got it from the field names and I also have it from my expression, so I'm going to delete one of those. But the point is you can use an expression to get exactly what you want in these pop-ups. So that expression, since I haven't labeled it or named it, it's just called expression/XPR0. Now I'm going to delete some of this text with my field name because I don't need it twice. I'm just going to leave my expression, and there I've got it. The trace is in miles, it's 18.16 miles, and that zone where you see expressions, that's just a storage bin for your expressions, and then you can use them in labels, you can use them in pop-ups, and other things inside your map. Okay, so now that's looking pretty good. I've used an expression this time for helping the user understand. Now I can also label things. I can enable labels and of course change the description. I can also get into the field names in my labels. So arcade expressions, you work with labels, they work with expressions inside configurable pop-ups. They work in a variety of places. And that's the versatility of the arcade scripting language. I'm going to bump up the halo size and also the text size, and I'm going to make it blue since it's a trace downstream. Of course, I can also change the stream trace itself from this reddish orange color to blue as well. So now I've got labels, I've got pop-ups. I'm pretty happy with this now, and it didn't take long. And also I've fostered some work with data, with different kinds of imagery, locations of imagery. Do I have permission to use that image in my pop-up, in my map? All kinds of discussions that you can have both technically and also the broader issues when you're using these tools. Now, can you use a video instead of a photo? You can't use it in the photo location, but you can link to a video as I'm doing here with a video off of Maui. Oh, wonderful. Look at that ocean blowhole. Pretty cool. So you can do that. All right, lots of versatility here. Get out there and do some mapping. Thanks.